German prosecutors expect to charge the suspect in an attack on a Christmas market in Magdeburg with murder and attempted murder. Officials have confirmed that 5 people died and 200 others were injured when a car rammed into the crowd. They believe the suspect, a 50-year-old doctor from Saudi Arabia, had acted alone. Now, the motive for the attack remains unclear, but he was critical of Islam and had been granted political asylum in Germany. People have been gathering in Magdeburg to pay their respects to those killed. Let's cross live to our reporter, Jenni Graham. She's covering the story for us in Magdeburg. Jenni, tell us more about the investigation into the suspect's motive.
Well, we heard earlier from police and local authorities here that the suspect, a Saudi national that had been living in Germany for the last 18 years, held widely anti-Saudi and anti-Islam views. Now, earlier on today, when we saw German Chancellor Olaf Scholz here, he was joined by Interior Minister Nancy Faeser, who said that it was clear that this suspect held deeply Islamophobic views. Now, in that statement earlier, the police urged people not to speculate about the motive behind this attack and not to speculate further about what led up to this point.
Tell us a little bit more about what's happening there in Magdeburg. What's going on around you at the moment?
Well, I'm right by the church here where a vigil has been taking place and a ceremony has been taking place inside that church. We're just about 100 metres away from the Christmas market where that attack happened. President Steinmeier, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier was in attendance, along with many first responders and emergency services, really who, many of which may even have been working last night when this tragedy occurred. Many people, have been coming by this church all day, leaving their floral tributes and candles. Many of them deeply, deeply emotional. People have been breaking down in tears. It's been an incredibly moving day for many people here with a community. It's not the smallest city, but really it does feel like a community has been hit here today, and not just the town itself.
And I understand you've been speaking to some of those who have come out to mourn a day on from this terrible attack. Tell us more about what kind of reaction you've seen.
Yeah, as I said, people have been deeply, deeply moved. We spoke to one woman earlier on today who said that she just couldn't fathom what had happened here. It's cliche, but you don't expect these things to happen on your doorstep. And she was just really, really breaking down in tears, saying that her grief was with not just the victims, the people who lost their lives, but all of their families and the people who witnessed the terrible events of last night. It's really a city in mourning.
Well, thank you so much for your reporting there. That is DW's Jenni Graham covering this story from Magdeburg. Now, the day after the attack, people in Magdeburg are trying to come to grips with the violent rampage that occurred on their doorstep. DW spoke with some locals to get their reactions.
A city stricken by grief, horrified by the carnage that was unleashed just days before Christmas.
It's horrible, so sad and shocking, so close to home. I don't know, just simply sad. Empathy and sadness for the relatives and for those who saw everything and will never be able to forget what they saw.
The Chancellor can come here and say that he's sorry, and I do believe that he is sorry, but whether he'll do anything about it is another question. We've seen that nothing gets done about things that have happened in the past, like stabbings and such.
I'm a lifelong Magdeburger, and what happened here really, really hurt. I can't find the words. I'm sorry.
I'm furious. I can't believe it and feel somehow powerless. I can't understand the motive for it. It's just terrible.
The tragic events unfolded at Magdeburg's packed Christmas market. A car travelling at speed drove through the crowd for a distance of at least 400 metres, according to police. killing and injuring people in its path. More than 100 emergency responders rushed to the scene. Police arrested a 50-year-old man nearby. Officials have confirmed that the suspect moved to Germany from Saudi Arabia in 2006. He'd been working as a medical doctor and was considered Islamophobic. German authorities visiting the scene on Saturday condemned the attack and called for unity. Friday's incident comes 8 years after a terror attack at a Berlin Christmas market, killing 13 people.
It's important to me that when such a terrible thing happens, such a terrible attack, which injures and kills so many people, almost on the anniversary of the attack on the Breitscheidplatz in Berlin, that we stay together as a country, that we come together and that we talk to each other, so that hate doesn't guide us, but that we are a community moving toward a common future.
As Magdeburgers slowly come to terms with the tragedy, one senior official in the city said, "Christmas is over in Magdeburg."
For more, I'm joined now in the studio by our political correspondent, Nina Haase. Nina, hi. The timing here is really important, right? This attack has happened less than 2 months before national elections in Germany. What does this mean for the current government and specifically for Chancellor Scholz himself?
Well, it means that the people in Germany who are already exhausted with their politicians are getting even more uncertainty. They're getting an even more heated debate. So we mustn't forget that it was only this week. It's really hard sometimes to acknowledge all of that Olaf Scholz lost the vote of confidence in the Bundestag, which essentially triggered that process that now we've officially started the election campaign and Germans will go to the polls on the 23rd of February. So everybody's sort of intensifying their messaging to their voters anyway. And when you have an attack like that, obviously people get scared, they get angry, they want responses, they ask themselves, how can it be that at a place where I am supposed to feel safe, why didn't the politicians protect me better? Why didn't the authorities protect other people better? And this is not helpful. We've seen the migration debate in Germany already picking up this week because, of course, of Assad's fall in Syria, with hundreds of thousands of Syrians in this country. You know, some people are demanding much more strict migration rules, especially the far-right AfD. And so this is extremely sensitive timing, and this is something where Olaf Scholz has promised that his government will provide answers, but he really does not have a lot of time, and he will have to deliver.
Now, he's perhaps not surprisingly made a call for unity among Germans. I mean, do you think this attack is really, it sounds like you think this attack is going to just put fuel on the fire?
Absolutely. I mean, that it was his strongest message today. It was also very clear that he didn't want to judge just where the culprit came from, what his motivation was. So they're watching that, they're observing that. And it was also clear from the reactions after this attack that from the far left to the far right, people started to instrumentalize it and use it. People who are critics of Islam said this is typical, this is somebody who's importing terrorism to Germany, but then also people who are very much in favor of Islamism say, okay, this is somebody who's against our religion. So it's a very heated debate. And then you've got foreign interference as well. You've got Elon Musk, the world's richest man, who is leading a platform where he uses his algorithms essentially also to decide what gets heard, what doesn't get heard. And this is a very heated moment. There has been a lot of criticism of that. And of course, at the moment, the far-right AfD are also organizing demonstrations in Magdeburg. There are counter-protests. So what we'll see in the next couple of hours, I think, is going to be a lot of different groupings in the streets, sort of, trying to get their message out and their idea of what needs to happen next.
And Nina, just very briefly before I let you go, you've mentioned the Tesla CEO, Elon Musk. He made waves here. There was an outcry in Germany after he made a controversial endorsement of the AfD, right?
Yeah, and that happened late on Thursday or Friday morning here. He said only the AfD can save Germany. Now, there are rules in the European Union that you can't have foreign interference in election campaigns. So technically speaking, this is illegal, but what can they do, right? And the German Chancellor also said, well, you know, this is covered by freedom of opinion. They didn't want to comment on that. But of course, the AfD was very, very grateful for support from Elon Musk. And this is definitely something where the role of social media will also have to be questioned in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Our political correspondent, Nina Haase, thank you so much for joining us. Let's get across to Hans-Jakob Schindler, an expert on terrorism, joining us today from Berlin. Welcome. We should make very clear the motive for this crime is still unclear. The suspect, however, may have been unhappy with the treatment of Saudi refugees in Germany. That is according to the local prosecutor's office. What do you make of that?
I mean, this is really a very specific radicalization path. It really, if anything, demonstrates that any ideological belief, conspiracy theory, if you drive it to the very end, always has the risk of an individual perpetrating a violent act at the very end. He seemed to have had quite of a strange history, calling emergency services without having an emergency, having a court case because of this and a fine here in Germany. It's a very peculiar individual, not really belonging or fitting in any of the bigger categories. He's not an Islamist. He's not a clear right-wing extremist. He calls himself a left-wing guy, but he's certainly a conspiratorial person that seemed to have radicalized over time online.
Indeed. Earlier, the German Interior Minister called the suspect's views Islamophobic. What are we to make of that?
As I said, whether you are an Islamist or an Islamophobe, once you take it too far in your radicalization process, and social media technically helps you, the algorithms will not hinder, but actually further radicalization process, then there is potential for violence at the end, whether it's from this or that starting point.
Now, you've mentioned also that the views the suspect expressed online had been growing increasingly radical over time. Somehow this was overlooked, and many will be now asking how that can be.
The sad news is social media these days is full of hatred, fantasies of violence, because social media companies have actually gotten worse in the moderation of their content, really reflecting the very little legal obligations that they have and no legal responsibility for the content on their platform, and a decreasing rather than increasing cooperation with security forces. X, where most of this material of this individual seems to have been posted, has essentially fired all of its content moderators in America. This is the exact wrong direction. Now, to expect that the German security services or any security service in a democracy is able to monitor the entirety of the internet, even if they would have the legal mandate to do so, which they don't, and not get any help from the social media company, is, due to the vastness of the internet, simply an impossibility. Now, would it be prevented this attack? This needs to be analyzed. Would it be sufficient if there was no gap in the physical surroundings of the Christmas market? Possibly, very more likely than the ability to see something such specifics on the internet as a looming danger.
Now, beyond monitoring social media, one of the questions that will come up now will be whether German authorities failed to act on any tips. We know Saudi security sources have said that Saudi Arabia warned Germany about this suspect ahead of time.
Yes, but we do not know yet when the Saudis warned the German authorities and what they warned about. This man was an anti-Saudi activist who was very, very, very vocal online, who helped, according to himself or what he posted online, people to flee from Saudi Arabia. So it could be that he was basically seen as a criminal or as a human smuggler by the Saudi authorities, and that was the warning was about. I do note that apparently, according to quite credible media reports. In 2023, the German security services did a risk assessment of this individual. And at that time, which is over a year ago, they deemed him not to be in danger of becoming violent. Again, there's a lot of people on the internet who say violent things and have very strange, maybe dangerous ideas, but never act on these. So there was a security assessment. Maybe that was triggered by a Saudi warning, maybe it wasn't. I just note the congruence of these two facts.
Well, thank you so much for your insights today. That is Hans-Jakob Schindler joining us from Berlin.
Thank you so much for having me.